Twitter free speech and not
Yeah,
free reach.
we'll get there, I'm sure. The top story here is Twitter Trust and Safety VP named Ella Irwin says she took the screenshots of the internal Twitter systems that Barry Weiss shared and that reporters were not accessing user DMs. And why is that relevant? Because you have to know the backstory. It's called the Twitter Files Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, where Elon allowed two journalists, namely Barry Weiss and what's the other guy?
Matt Taibbi.
Matt Taibbi, thank you. That who, importantly, do not identify as right leaning. Right? Barry is very notably left leaning. She was at the New York Times.
They do identify as extremely thirsty.
True that. Okay, so and by the way, Elon historically doesn't identify as right leaning, nor do I. I've never voted for anything Republican in my life. So just for the records here. And by the way, nor
But I
do
love Hugo Boss suits. That's what you're going to say.
I. Well, I the Hugo Boss military. By the way, I did wear a Hugo Boss jacket, like a military jacket, for the longest time. There is a. That's a long story. Won't go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, um, the the point here is that there was the first files that came out, and then there was a pause because
Let's go for the reductive point first, right? The
okay,
reductive point first is that we're supposed to be outraged by this, but the truth of the matter is that this is all a false story, because this is a private platform and they have the right to, and they said in their terms of service that they had the ability to deboost or de-amplify and do all of these things as they wished. And Jack was part of that, and I don't see why he should get off of that. And then Elon himself said that he would be not limiting freedom of speech, but he would be limiting freedom of reach, which is exactly your point
yes,
and the point of the
yes,
person who
yeah, yeah,
started the
yeah.
chat today, right?
Yes.
So that's the overarching point, is that nobody's saying anything, just a nonsense. It's
No,
like,
I
do the same thing as that they've been doing, and here's the
yes,
smoking gun, and it's the
yes.
same smoking gun that you're holding.
However, key notable point to differentiate here, which is
Of the ultimate wasting everybody's time. It's nonsense.
hold on a second. There's an important distinction to be made here, which is when asked about many people who were shadow banned, or what there's a new term today called search banned, meaning if you were searched for in Twitter, you wouldn't be found. That wasn't even really known to really. That wasn't a popular concept until these files came out. But there's trend banned, which people did conceptually think was happening. That certain trends that should be trending weren't trending and whatever. And Vijaya, who was running this part of Twitter, did say in interviews that Twitter wouldn't. It's not in Twitter's interest to be using these tools. She did acknowledge they exist, to Nicholas's point, but wouldn't use such tools to, in a political sense, to give. She said that would be an injustice to democracy to use these tools to kind of evenly, or whatever. But they do seem to have been used rather unevenly. Now, Elon is saying we should be doing shadow banning. However,
Isn't, right? It's like
hold on.
that's the whole point. It's like saying, it's really amazing how, the only people that are getting banned are the people that are screaming abuse. That's going to naturally happen, because I don't think the other side are trying to do that, and so it doesn't make any sense again.
Here we go, though, because here's the difference. is he's saying now, today, that where's the update? That they will, if somebody is shadow banned or whatever, he says Twitter will soon start. No, not that one. Where is it? Where did it go? He has a whole bunch of chats with
whether
Jay.
you are shadow banned or not.
Yeah, they'll be transparent on your profile about the status of your account, so that you'll know you've been shadow banned or search banned or trend banned or whatever, and provide, they claim, remedies for how to resolve it. That is
That's
how he
good.
phrased it. And so I was trying to find the tweets to read it in his own tongue, because
So the
the
question that then
It's hair splitting. It's totally hair splitting.
but then yeah, exactly. Then you get the next question, and the next question is who is judging whether you should be shadow banned and who are you appealing to? It's a the whole thing is just the same thing. It's like a company is there and it's their business to regulate that platform. If Elon wants to make it a more right-leaning platform, as his recent tweet, including the Goipa Pepe tweet of yesterday, which was just astonishing, quite frankly, I mean, then that's what he's going to do because he owns it. It's his network.
Okay, so we have to get back. I want to get back to the top story. Here, I found the tweet. It's 12 hours ago. Twitter's working on an update that will show your true account status so that you'll know clearly if you've been shadow banned and the reasons why and how to appeal. Okay. Now, why is everyone talking about the screenshots? It's because Barry Weiss, as part of her Twitter thread, showed a screenshot of what Twitter employees see when they look at your profile. And it shows very clearly if you're on the trends blacklist or the recent abuse strike or a notification strike or these other things. And on the left side of the screen, kind of slightly out of focus, cropped off on the left side of the screen, it says direct messages, implying that if that was clicked on, the Twitter employee could read your direct messages. And the truth is, yes, Twitter employees can read your direct messages. You should have always known that and assumed that. However, because Barry Weiss was the one who shared that photo with the world publicly, people thought, oh shit, does Barry Weiss have access to my direct messages, or do other journalists who this is being shared with, do they have this access? And now you know why. The top story today is, again, the Twitter Trust and Safety VP says she took the screenshots of the internal system that Barry Weiss shared and that reporters were not accessing user DMs.
But why? So A, prove it, and B, why. You have to ask the reason why that is being raised. And the reason why that is being raised is that would put Elon in some legal jeopardy, and it would become another front for an attack. That's why she is coming out and saying that.
Oh, that's because I think it's because Jack said, "Hey, release all the files, including everything in the discussions in the kitchen
Yeah.
sink." Right?
Yeah, Jack says, release all the files when I was in charge and censoring all of your speech. Or, I mean, actually just running a normal private company that's allowed to regulate your speech and read your messages, because that's the fucking point, isn't it?
So
What is the possibility that all of this is a marketing campaign for Twitter?
oh, no doubt about it.
It's
Of
exactly
course
what it
it
is, because
is.
it's a giant nonsense.
Of course it is.
Right.
A
So then why are we
giant
discussing it
nonsense.
so much? Why are we
That's
spending
right.
so much time
Because
debating it?
because it's working. It's a giant
Well, it
nonsense.
doesn't
And
have
like,
to.
We need to move on.
It doesn't have to
no,
work.
But one
I
second. I
agree.
mean, you're using the internet to send direct messages, just like an SMS. What doesn't mean that in all countries everyone can read those, like, or is allowed to read those. And the phone that you're using it on belongs to a private company, and the internet provider belongs to a private company. So they have the data and they have to keep it for I don't know how long. But not in every country, everyone of that company is allowed to read them and access them. So it's not like very like that everyone that has a private company and you write an SMS from the provider can read that usually. I don't think that's just as common as you like pretend right now to be, because you don't have another choice right now. What are you writing letters now? Like that's ridiculous. Or
You
that
have
every
end-to-end
email
encryption,
provider can
Katerina,
read.
and Google is reading every single email that you've ever sent and passing through all that data. So you should expect that that is the case.
Well,
Well, if you have Microsoft and you're writing it through your own private company or an hospital or something, and it's HIPAA data in there, they are not, and not everyone is allowed. That's not so correct. And I don't think,
If you're
maybe
saying
in
in a
the
HIPAA
US this is
environment, it's
okay. I
different.
don't think in India or in the EU this will be okay for a long time, to be honest. And I hope they all go broke and Facebook goes all broke, because they're useless and they just make radicalization and trash in the world. And I
Hope is
hope
not what
they do
happens in real
regulations,
life.
make them all go broke, I hope. And congratulations to the judges that did the recent decision.
But this is a lot of free marketing. He's obviously trying to dial up engagement and new users. And if you have something controversial, he had like what 2 million people listening to him on that Spaces thing that he did. So all of those go straight to the
100,000,
bottom
yeah.
line. And what is kind of funny is that while he's complaining that other people aren't advertising with him, he is not advertising with him. He's doing these viral methods that he's done all along, and he's superb at it. So I feel like we are willingly subjecting ourselves to somebody's marketing campaign.
He is
Okay.
showing the power of being a meme king, which is what we've always warned about, that is able to drive the narrative across the entire world and twist that narrative, just as our perceptions were twisted during the 2016 election and during the Brexit. We are seeing exactly, instead of it being a state-based manipulation of social media via a bot attack, you are seeing a directed attack and a directed interjection of a private person with a corporation that has 200 million odd citizens, and he's driving conversation through that network. And he's scoring points where no points are needing to be scored because he's completely disinforming all of his fans and all of the the meme followers. And that's what's so disturbing about it all. It's just total nonsense.
it's like a
Well,
cult.
I think that's what happens when one becomes a celebrity, because in order to remain a celebrity, you need something new every day, every week, and it is impossible to maintain the newness while maintaining quality. So whatever got you to be a celebrity may have been very worthwhile, but what it takes to remain a celebrity asymptotically approaches BS, and that's partly what we're seeing.
And I also think that he is now figured out, or he thinks he wants has figured out, that the people who were being felt they were being driven off the platform and shadow banned and censored were people on the right. So now he's got them feeling, he wants to get them feeling safe so that he can drive Parler and Truth Social out of business and get them to come back to Twitter. Whereas, the other people weren't really doing anything anyway. So we're, those of us in the middle, we're just sitting here waiting for something important to happen that we can get the news about. And in the meantime, doing our ordinary work. It's like very few people are invested in this platform to the extent that Elon wants them to be.
Hey, Tyler, I got questions, Ken.
Yeah.
When I got here a little bit late, and I thought I heard you say that, 'cause I even haven't read this story, so I'm not going to talk about it, but did you say that Barry Weiss was left wing leading because she used to work for the New York Times?
She
No, she
identified.
wasn't. That's why she got
No, she wasn't. That's my
sideways.
point.
Yeah, she wasn't.
No, I just wanted to clarify that. She she left because she wasn't left leaning enough for
I
them.
understand. Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay.
I agree with that 1,000%.
Okay.
Um, okay. The but the point I want there was a Twitter space when after the Twitter files came out with
Yeah, it was with Brad Narfowle or whatever his name was,
right,
and there were 100,000. It was really a crypto follow up on FTX, and he was
yeah,
asked these
Kim.com.
questions
Yeah,
on that
it was the
with Kim. It was
uh,
it was last week.
Weinstein, Brett, not Brett, the other Weinstein was there.
Yeah, Eric.
Eric, Eric, and because Eric had been tweeting about this forever, him and Vijay used to go round and round, and he got clearly got Twitter upset at him. But you have a bunch of folks who like the Weinstein brothers, like uh, Jordan Peterson isn't American, so he's not necessarily American left or right, but people who aren't really right, if anything, they value wise identify a bit more left, who uh, really want to raise the flag around calling out the extremists on each end. Elon seems to fall into this camp as well. About we've got to come up with the folks who aren't on the extremes need to start to understand the danger of folks on the extremes of either side, and we need to start acting uh, in a way that disarms extremists on each side, so that they can don't drag the rest of everybody into you know this continual spiral, this downward spiral of political division and whatnot. Was my big takeaway out of that. It's an important point. I wonder to what degree non-extremists can come together to neutralize the negative effects of extreme political extremism. And maybe it is important that we figure out ways to try to achieve that. Um, Anywho,
By shouting
the
at each other in 280 characters or less.
right.
Hi,
So,
Heather. May I ask?
mm,
So, from my own image of the American media, so like the traditional, maybe newspaper and TV stations, basically, their sides are obvious, right? So, like Twitter, this kind of platform, Twitter, maybe previously is more left, right? So, is there another platform as big as Twitter can have the other side, then then get it balanced. I mean, even right now, the TV stations and the newspaper I just mentioned, or the big news media.
BB,
Yeah,
here's the problem. The problem is that the media did separate into different camps, right? We can even suggest now that the New York Times, of all things, joined one of the two camps, and it turns out that that is a real problem, and it would be a problem if Twitter and the social media networks followed the same. It's important that news. It would be great if news didn't split into camps, and it would be great if the social media platforms also didn't, so that there can be debate and dialogue and whatever, instead of siloing the views, because when the views get siloed, those are breeding grounds for more extremism.
thank you. So I think Elon, at least what he said, is trying to get toward this direction, right? Because he tries not to silencing. Not to silence those. Maybe you say noise, then people can have the chance to debate. So, because I still wondering if Twitter is the only dominant social platform, then what's the problem to say it was too left previously?
I think people just don't want to say that.
Look, whether an outlet is left leaning or right leaning, at the end of the day, the evolution that we need is to get more accurate information so that the information that we're receiving is such that we can see, what it is, and we can make good judgments on it rather than listening to misinformation and disinformation, because that's really what's going on in, in the information space. It's just a gossip network of people screaming at each other.
Okay, so
But the problem is that the right
no,
kills people
Katerina.
and makes it's a threat to public health, and the left extremists don't. I mean, that's just a fact, right? You have people shooting in gay communities, black churches, Jewish temples from the far right. You have them trying to throw democracy in Germany and so on. But all of this is not happening from the far left. I mean, it's a whole nother threat. I'm sorry, I had to state that in there. Thank you.
You need a lesson on world history if you believe that. Go look at the history of terrorism. Go look at the history of airline hijackings and tell me that the left never killed anybody. That's an
No,
incredible
but
comment.
right now, that is the fact. Like, okay, for in the 60s and the 70s and so on, yes, and in the 80s, RAF and so on, they're all in prison. But right now, we have the opposite problem, and we have to kind of adapt,
So what
to the thinking.
you addressed it back in the 70s and 60s and 80s? How did the left remove that extremist element?
I don't believe the left did do anything. Actually, the Außenminister Fischer, he was part of that community at some point. He just grew out of it, and I guess a lot of them got arrested for their whole life.
You know what? There's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on both sides. So, but I understand what you're saying, Katerina. But keep in mind, when our congressmen were playing baseball on a field on the East Coast, Mid Atlantic, it was a Bernie Sanders fan that actually attacked those guys. Nobody died, but a number of people got wounded, and they were saved by two people of color, which is very interesting. The two, one was actually a lesbian Secret Service person, and the other was a black guy. And they were the only two people on site that actually saved them from somebody from the left that was going after the Republican congressman. Oh boy, the irony! So crazy on both sides.
Okay, the just to finish the sequence of headlines here, Bloomberg gives although a bunch of report. It's just the Elon Musk tweet that I just read a minute ago that he says Twitter's working on an update that will show users if they've been shadow banned and reasons why and how to appeal. Okay. So next, a whole new topic is Washington Post. The FTC sues to block Microsoft's $69 billion Activision Blizzard acquisition, charging that the deal announced in January may suppress Microsoft's gaming competitors. The lawsuit marks Alina Khan's, the FTC chair, most significant effort to date to address tech industry consolidation, and it could upend Microsoft's gaming ambitions.
Lina Khan is her position is to limit the technocracy, so she's doing that job. Whether rightly or wrongly, Microsoft can argue that it's not anti-competitive. I think they're very keen on this acquisition, and I think they will fight back here.
Yeah, but I think
There
that
are legal standards that she has to meet to do this. Okay, and there's actually a formula on which it's too early in the morning for me to pronounce that formula, but it's like an H squared stands for something. Two people's names, long names that they look at market shares and they square market shares, and you have to show whether there's an undue concentration in an industry. I doubt she can meet the mathematical test because Sony right now is the largest player in the market. If you would add Activision in with Microsoft, they'd probably be equal to where Sony is. But there's other players like
How
Nintendo is
big's
still.
X? How big is Xbox? Does anyone know Xbox versus PlayStation versus?
We're just looking at devices, or we're looking at like the total industry, including the
Well,
games.
I'm sure that Lena Khan's going to come from the perspective of PC gaming, console gaming, and she's going to go very wide, and they're going to try and go narrow, just like Google says.
So when I looked at
We're not
the
a
numbers
monopoly.
yesterday, they were just like total share, in gaming, including everything. So it was like Sony 23%, and then Microsoft was, I don't know, 16 something, and then Activision was 8. So it adds up, together they're close. But Nintendo's in double digits. Um, but and then that does become the issue of antitrust. How are you defining the market? Is it everything in gaming? Is it just devices? Do you take out subscriptions? And Microsoft has already made a fairly generous offer about the thing that Sony thinks is the most so important. It's Call
Well,
of Duty, that they're going to like guarantee them access, and maybe even access at a fixed price for Call of Duty, so that they would have no advantage over Call of Duty, which is like
for
the big,
10 years.
yeah. So
I think the other thing, Ken, I was just going to point out, it's Matt. I've been off for a while, guys. Good to hear everyone's voices. If you go back to public information, Satya was pretty open about his intentions with being fair. Right now, you've got the Google Play Store, you've got the Apple App Store, and as we've discussed on prior calls, those are the dominant features. So much so that they can block certain business models or tobacco companies from going through there. So I think to your point, Ken, the 10-year deal with Sony, which I think we said was a nothing burger a couple of days ago, that is showing the DOJ goodwill, and it's also that HH squared analysis will change over time. Because if you take a look at GitHub, another Microsoft purchase, they are going to be pulling in the developers to actually accelerate. Because I think one of the defenses on this was that this will stall some of the startups from being successful. Well, then you have to break those startups down to which one of those are the developer community entities. And I think you're going to see GitHub, and I'm saying this not as a Microsoft employee, but just sharing some public information, that argument will change over time because there's going to be much more incentives for developers and startups to come through and develop their product offerings, whether it's social commerce or otherwise, or gaming, and that will actually show a far more competitive landscape than it is today or perceived in that current FTC suit. So, just my 2 cents.
Matt, one of the problems with antitrust law, it's not forward looking. It literally is static looking. Okay,
Yeah,
so when you argue the legalities, you don't get to necessarily. You could argue whatever you want, but basically, what you think is the future isn't necessarily what they decide on, because they're going to say we can't predict the future. We can only see now, and that's the
that's a
failure of
fair
antitrust law. Yeah.
that's a fair point. But I think
That's
we
fair
will
statement.
show the interest and sign up at a certain point. This is my just logical thinking, that they'll show a huge backlog of people that want to do that, and also the developers are going to vote on this as well because they're currently being, and I use this in air quotes, overtaxed for that 30% on either side, or even what Facebook is, dangling out there, 47% to play. So this is not just about the metaverse. It's not just gaming. It's a lot of different other things that I think will be presented. But it's a fair point, Ken.
Well, I think
If I may
you're
add something quickly here, right on the back of that. So personally, I think it's the worst thing that could happen for Microsoft is to actually get this deal done. This deal was minted at the time when Activision Blizzard was worth about that amount. Now it's worth way less than that, maybe less than half. And $67 billion is a lot of money. So with $67 billion, you can maybe start your own or grow another maybe third level studio to become something big. And it's not just about Call of Duty. Call of Duty is one of their titles, but someone else can come in, or some other company can be bought for maybe half, maybe even a third of that amount, and grow it into something big. And Microsoft has done that several times in the past. With Activision Blizzard, Microsoft is getting a really toxic environment that Satya has actually vowed to clean up and improve on, and that all that package means all that luggage that comes with it means that there is an additional costs that are coming with it. With Microsoft fighting this legal battle over something like this, that means that it's not just going to be $68 billion. It's going to be like $10 billion on top of that. And I see that it's just not worth it. Just buy something else or grow whatever studio that you have, and just take another route instead of just buying one of the bigger players. And I'm telling you, if Microsoft backs out from this specific deal, Activision Blizzard is going to be in a lot of trouble. Just by what's going on right now. So maybe this is the best thing that's going to happen to Microsoft, is just to back out and let it play. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I think the games that are available for Activision and Blizzard, it's something like Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk, Spyro, Skylanders, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, and Candy Crush. So those are huge titles in terms of market and mind share. I think it is worth it. It's just a really high ticket item, but it's nothing that Microsoft can't afford now that they're almost $1 trillion again, right?
Can I introduce a thought that I've not heard anyone introduce on this
Sure.
issue? We
It's your
just we just had the Chat GPT is one of the biggest stories of the year, right? Where and then we also
yes.
have Dolly 2 and this new chat AI apps, right? You've seen the is everyone else seeing all of their friends update their avatars with these new AI improved avatars lately?
Yep.
Right,
It's gone viral.
right. It's gone hyper viral, right? And they're super impressive. I think we'll all agree, right? We've never seen our mediocre looking friends look so fantastic, right? And
Look at
that's one.
those. Gorgeous.
Uh, it's normally it can if you just show that avatar to your friend without saying showing the original photo. Actually, I think it's really hard to recognize who is the original one.
Okay, but here's my point, which is we are not far away from mortals making video games,
Okay.
or the cost of video game production is going to plummet, just like the cost of music production has plummeted.
I think the structure of if I may,
At some
just the structure of the dev teams, I think, is going to change. I think that's going to be the big thing. You're not going to need as large of a dev team.
well, especially with GPT Chat 4, where if it sucks in all of the code, of all the entire open source repositories of GitHub and everything else, and then you say, "Hey, make me an Instagram clone," and people are doing this, and they're showing and pasting examples of this, and the developers are freaking out. And show me how to make this, and it gives you a decent, head start on how to do it, saving countless hours which is real money if you're really trying to develop apps. So it's possible the combination of a future of Dolly 2 Stable Diffusion mixed with the code that this would lower the barriers very significantly to developing video games. And why is that important? Because then you'll have more competition in the video game space than you ever could have imagined.
Hey
I,
Tyler.
and
Tyler,
it's
we
the
were
same.
just
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna. Sorry, Neg. No, I was just gonna. Oh, sorry, this is Ben. Yeah, I think so. Take it away from gaming and go to AI and machine learning, which we think will be regulated. The NLP aspect is meaning the average worker can do their voice input for natural language processing into these AI and machine learning offers, and very quickly you don't have to be a coder. So specifically to Tyler's point, the barrier to entry is going to be lowered in a big way across all technology because of Chat GPT or OpenAI or NLP as a co-pilot. So we're going to see these. To your point, I think this is where you're going, or where you did go, where you landed, Tyler's. There's going to be more competition, not less. That's the
Yeah,
punchline.
the barriers are dissolving before us, and so I don't know that this is going to be as fruitful or as necessary as Lena might hope in giving consumers more choices or whatever. The consumers are going to be literally drowning in choice
And
very near
hold on a
future.
second. I mean, let's be clear. Microsoft put $1 billion into OpenAI. So OpenAI has got corporate interest that is actually looking at putting in another billion or two, supposedly, at the moment. So just hold your horses before you think that people are going to be able to use this, and it's going to be paying a tribute. So Sam made it very clear when Elon asked him how much is each chat costing, and Sam said single-digit cents. And he said we're going to have to have a business model for this soon enough. So don't think that's coming for free. That's not public AI. That's corporate AI. And so if you're using that to build it, and you're going to have to. Something's going to have to give. Let's be clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
is
people,
it
hey, people,
possible?
people are very soon going to pay for it very happily, but like paying a few cents to save a few hours of coding will be the best deal all day long. John, you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to sort of converge a couple of trends that support exactly what you're saying. And so, in the creator economy, in a GPT-3 plus world, um, in the platform or multi platform economy, the convergence um, of and then the other big piece is the App Store. And so, if you sort of put all these things together, um, and look at how gaming communities could
They got you, John.
on these platforms, that what is because a single individual is not going to be able to compete with, you know, Activision or Microsoft or whomever, but collective groups that grow out of, say, an existing gaming community that have good coding skills that can use a lot of these technologies will collectively be able to do exactly what you're saying, not individually, but collectively. And the business model is likely, at least from what we see, and a walled garden kind of approach for gaming in the past.
Uh, I
Right, and
have
what attribution of IP as well? Well, that's going to be another big issue. Who owns the IP, and can AI own intellectual property that's created? And do you owe, is there a fingerprint to that?
Next article, Bloomberg says U.S. prosecutors investigate if FTX orchestrated the Luna and UST collapse. And what instigate part of what's instigating this is Do Kwon, who was the dude behind Luna, says that what's done in darkness will come to light. He says, I think the time has come for Genesis to reveal if they provided the 1 billion UST shortly before the crash to SBF, says Kwon. In a thread of tweets, the Terraform Labs co-founder sought explanations on the mystery of large transactions involving large crypto lending firms and Alameda shortly before Terra's crash. So he's insinuating quite strongly that SBF potentially made some brisk moves of significant sums that led to the collapse of Luna. And so now
Yeah,
the
that's
U.S.
convenient.
U.S.
Hi, Don here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Donna. God bless that
Hi.
you're. Thank you for jumping in. Yes, the mic's yours.
Yeah. So what I heard, what I heard, and of course, out of the uh, series of very
Donna, let's come back
payments
in
that were
Donna. Hold on. Donna, if you can pause, and we'll try you again in 2 minutes because your connection isn't quite audible at the moment. But I'm very eager to hear the point you're willing to share. I don't even see Donna on stage, so I can't mute her. Okay, Donna,
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
we're gonna see if someone else has a thought and come right back to you. So,
Scammers. Do Kwon, Mashinsky, SBF, they were all just derivative, Ponzi, over-levered, fooled by randomness, zero interest rate policy beneficiaries. They all deserve everything that was coming to them.
Hi, is this better?
there you go.
Okay, sorry, I had to go to a different room. So what I've heard is that there were a series of very small transactions, but very, very rapid, and the prosecutors looking at whether or not this constituted market manipulation, and what the point being that they were trying, of course, to force the price down because they may have been short, and that their surmise that the only person that could have done this was a combination of FTX and Alameda. Now, whether that ends up the exact irony that instead of getting a small or maybe medium size profit, they ended up creating the series of events that led to their own decline. So
Yes.
it's to be determined what happens in New York.
Can you help fill in the blanks for how Luna's demise, or Do Kwon's demise, or however you want to put it, inadvertently led to links up to the FTX implosion?
Well, Alameda had a big deficit in their balance sheet, which because of 3AC blew up. So Luna
Yeah.
goes down, 3AC goes down, Genesis has a big hole in their balance sheet. Everybody is impaired without admitting that they're impaired. Also, GBC becomes, which was being used and already a decline to a discount being used as collateral for everybody in these loans. That starts disintegrating everywhere, and so people are covering up in terms of loans, etc. What their holes in their balance sheet are, and of course all the markets go down across the board. So everything that Alameda or FTX would be holding, liquid or illiquid tokens, they can't keep the prices up enough to be able to, on a sustained basis, uh, not have a call on their collateral because it became under collateralized.
That leads perfectly to the next article from CNBC. The SEC now asks U.S. public companies to disclose to investors their exposure to crypto assets. Because this tumbling house of cards that's going on, as Donna just perfectly laid out, were kind of essentially originating with Luna, leading to Three Arrows Capital, leading to eventually SBF and the FTX and what have you. Potentially, you might have non-crypto companies that are also exposed, right? So the SEC is asking U.S. public companies to disclose their exposure to crypto assets after "quote unquote" recent bankruptcy and financial distress.
Great idea.
I think it's a great. I agree. I think it's a great idea.
I can't imagine it's that meaningful.
I would hope not. I really hope not.
I know we think that sometimes, but what I mean, remember what a couple of decades ago when a couple of companies slipped up on derivatives that had nothing to do with their core business, and they were in the consumer products industry, and they had to say, hey, we had to take a couple of hits here because some bets we made on certain things didn't play out. So I think it's good to know.
Next up, New York Times. SBF agrees to testify before a House committee on December 13th, but remains quiet about a request from a Senate committee which could issue a subpoena. And that's interesting because then he would have to leave the Bahamas, would he not? Or deny the subpoena, which of course he would if it came down to that. He said on Twitter he would appear before a House committee next week, but was quiet about a similar request from Senate. Okay. Next from Reuters, NordVPN. About 5 million people
Hey,
globally.
Tyler, before we move on, question for Donna: Would investment houses like Andreessen Horowitz fall under that rubric of having to report their investment in that space, or not because they don't have shareholders?
It's only for public companies.
That's what I would
Right.
assume. Just curious. Okay.
NordVPN. About 5 million people globally, including 600,000 Indians, have had their data stolen and sold on the Genesis, Russian, and 2easy bot markets for about $6 per piece on average.
And the scammers lost money.
Istanbul-based delivery startup Getter closes its acquisition of Berlin-based Gorillas, valuing the group at $10 billion, and sources say Gorillas alone at 1.2 billion of the 10 billion.
Say that again.
Istanbul's rapid delivery, 15-minute delivery company called Getter acquired the European Central Western European competitor called Gorillas, and now at apparently around $1 billion, and now the combined company is now worth 10 billion. Interesting that the Istanbul company was the one who acquired the European one. Okay, Google announces Chrome Saver mode, which promises to cut memory usage by up to 30%, and an energy saver mode rolling out in the coming weeks. Well, thank God for that. Apple and Ericsson reach a licensing agreement over patented cellular standard essential technologies and more, ending a years-long legal battle, which I happen to know about, having done things with Ericsson. Apple was in violation of Ericsson intellectual property, and this was a multi-year long legal lawsuit around 5G. Anyway, so apparently they've settled. Apple and Ericsson have reached a licensing agreement that will put an end to a years-long, increasingly nasty legal battle between the two companies. As announced in a press release, the deal includes licenses relating to patented cellular standard essential technologies and grants. This is the fact that Ericsson fucking owns 5G, by the way, like the patents and stuff. The two companies first sued each other in 2015, accusing each other of various patent infringements and licensing disagreements in regard to 2G, 3G, 4G technologies, which Ericsson created. So you can see where this is going. While the initial lawsuits were settled, the battle resumed in October of 2021, this time over patent licensing related to 5G technologies. Oh, this old game again? The two companies launched lawsuits against one another for patent infringement, with Ericsson going as far as to seek a ban on iPhone imports. Apple accused Ericsson of strong arm tactics. That's kind of rich, because Apple notoriously, the rest of we just skipped an article. The article I just skipped was Tim Sweeney from Epic talking about going to the Supreme Court to deal with Apple using their strong arm tactics. By the way, just
Also, that famous photo of Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs sitting at that bench, basically duking it out because there wasn't necessarily, everything wasn't peachy in the garden, as it were.
that particular meeting in right across the street from Stanford University there in Palo Alto was in that strip mall that whoever that random person was should be known in the annals of geek history. But that was Jobs asked for the meeting with Schmidt to explain to Schmidt that he was going to go scorched earth and spend every penny of Apple's resources to prevent Google from ripping off the iPhone and the iOS with the Android and Google's. Jobs had just learned of Google acquiring Android and their plans to make a competitor, uh, smartphone operating system for everybody else. And Steve went uh, ballistic and threatened to, fight to the death and beyond, which he did. Anyway, the next, it says Apple accused Ericsson of strong arm tactics and in the negotiation for licensed patent communication technology. Well, it's their technology, and you're infringing on it. So yeah, they're going to do whatever they feel they need to do. They don't have a history of being using strong arm tactics like Apple does. Apple's renowned for having that. Ericsson is not. So Apple accusing Ericsson of that is perhaps a bit of projection. And by the way, I'm the last person to normally defend Ericsson, by the way. So this sentiment,
Say it again. Again, what the issue is? Can you restate it?
yeah, Apple infringed on Ericsson's patents
But
for 2G,
Ericsson
3G, 4G, and 5G antennas and what?
all right, but Ericsson would be more than happy to license this kind of technology to Apple. All the telecom companies.
Apple was refusing to pay. Apple was refusing to pay the licenses. That was the problem.
Apple pays. Apple is really good at paying this kind. Already paid Nokia. They already paid. I think they pay Huawei for some of their patents. They're a good camper, and they have money. Maybe
Yeah,
they
they
did
weren't.
disagree on the amount.
Okay,
Not
well,
It's just that they have historically. I think they struck a deal with Nokia like a few years back for like $4 billion.
everyone else is paying Ericsson. I don't know why Apple's not.
Interesting.
Apple's positioning in this legal battle has been boosted by its acquisition of Intel's modem business. There it is. Yeah, because which gives it access to its own collection of standard essential patents. Exactly. And so now they're less reliant or on
Yeah,
Ericsson.
Apple pays. Apple is one of the good companies when it comes
Apple
to
didn't
patent.
pay. Apple acquired a company so that they could get access to patents that would allow them to do what they need to do, rather than pay Ericsson for their technology.
All right.
It was cheap. It was cheaper to go buy a competitor who had similar patents. Despite the switch, however, licensing patents from companies like Ericsson and Qualcomm will still be key. Okay. Anyway, so the next topic is the hype around esports is fading as teams and organizations shrink due to weak sponsorships and ad market, falling VC investment, and the crypto meltdown. Okay. SoftBank company Snapdeal drops their IPO plans after filing its regulatory papers, blah, blah, blah. And then Politico has a piece on how Estonia is aiding cybersecurity workers in Ukraine and coordinating with European and US allies in a global effort to defend against Russia's cyber attacks. Yes, if you didn't know, it's basically Russia versus the world with regard to cyber attacks. It's kind of Russia and China and North Korea and Iran. Again, the good guys versus versus the rest of the world with regard to cyber attacks and defending against cyber attacks. And you already have these two camps are already quite well established in the cyber world. So Estonia and a lot of people, and by the way, Ukraine is very uniquely helping is with the good guy team, for lack of a better word, the West, which includes Japan. So it's ironic to call it the West, but anyway, you get my point, which is America and its allies. Ukraine is very much involved, and I'll share something I happen to know that is not yet widely really reported, which is, you remember when Putin predicted that he would reach Kyiv in 3 days, that the Russian tanks would roll into Kyiv in 3 days? And he seemed very confident about that. And that's a strange thing to say. So, and clearly he was wrong. Clearly he miscalculated something. And the whole world thinks now, today, how could he have been so stupid? How could he have been so foolish? How could he not have known, blah, blah, blah? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. Russian hackers working for the state through FSB, the Russian intelligence, had been exploring vulnerabilities all around the world for many, many years, including the US, everywhere. And they, using the art of war, had found lots of vulnerabilities that they were saving for a rainy day to use when it was really advantageous to use them, let's say. Right? So, like in a cyber war. So I'm not just going to break into your house because I found out you have a back door open. I'm going to wait until I really hate you and you kill my dog, and then I'm going to go in through the back door that I happen to know about, that I didn't tell you about. So the Russia had a huge assortment of vulnerabilities they had acquired and collected over the years, including in Ukraine and everywhere else, and they were very confident about that. And they were going to obviously take advantage of those when they were attacking Ukraine in the first hours of the invasion in their 3-day march to Kyiv. And something went terribly wrong along the way, which is some of those cybersecurity researchers on Russia's team happen to have parents or grandparents in Kyiv. And they didn't so much like the idea of Russian tanks rolling into grandma's house. So they leaked the playbook to the West, to the Ukrainians, but more importantly to the US. And now you know why the NSA sent its most elite cybersecurity defense force to Kyiv in October, the month before the invasion, which was reported. We covered it here in this room. And which is very strange that we would go do that under any other circumstance, and why we kept insisting to Ukraine, oh, they're coming to attack. For sure, Russia's going to attack, and Ukraine kept saying, no, we don't think they're going to attack, and we kept saying, no, they're coming, get ready, and we're sending our support over to help you in the most efficient way that we can, which is to make sure that your communication stays up, that your banking stays up, that your medical shit stays up, that all of your core digitized stuff, which is a lot of stuff, is able to withstand the cyber attacks that will very soon be coming your way. So thank God to those Ukrainian sympathizing Russian cybersecurity researchers who leaked the vulnerabilities and playbook to the West. And now you know why the West has more or less, by the way, coincidentally, seen a whole lot less Russian cyber meddling since the Ukraine invasion started. We were having some before the Ukraine shit started, with the Colonial Pipeline, with the meatpacking company, and then Biden went to meet Putin in Geneva and told him knock that off, and then our evil went and moved from inside of Russian geography, as I told you they would, moved to outside of Russian geography, and then were arrested in Romania, Latvia, and what have you. And now there's not a whole lot of Russian cyber attacks going on writ large to the degree that they were previously. There still is stuff going on, no doubt. But Russia thought they had the world by the nuts with this playbook of vulnerabilities that they were going to execute, and turns out that playbook got leaked, and that's why Russia's in the predicament that it finds itself in today, because they started the invasion with the assumption they were going to be able to turn off everything, turn off Ukraine like a light switch, and just roll the tanks in. And when they went to hit the switch,
Tyler, maybe they were meant to be like think, or they gave them the false impression that you'd be able to do this, go ahead and do it, and then once you're in, now the truth comes out, and you guys you were never in control, you knew nothing, and now the hammer comes down. Something like that.
Okay. So the next article, we did that one. No emoji better suited to Tokyo-based. Who cares? Bunch of fundraising announcement. GitHub launches Copilot for Business with corporate licensing and policy controls for $19 a month per user. Hong Kong passes an amendment requiring virtual asset providers to follow strict anti-money laundering guidelines. Oh, I know what that's about. Basically, folks in China are desperate to get money out of China, and they'll come up with every crazy thing they can, like gold watches. So they will literally look for gold watches as you go in or out of Macau or China or Hong Kong, or just gold of all kinds, or diamonds, or anything like that. And so now they're also trying to crack down on virtual assets of any kind, like digital poppies or digital tulips, or whatever, anything that people can way to launder money. They're going to try and crack down on that. Twitch streamers are migrating to other services, burned out by earnings coupled to hours streamed. Interesting. Amazon rolls out something called Inspire, a TikTok-like photo and video feed in its app, and lets customers like and buy products
Oh, we
in
saw
this.
that coming.
Did we? What is it? What is this thing? What is this? A TikTok-like shopping thing? Amazon's rolling out to buy products? This
Right.
sounds
We
crazy.
didn't talk about how China is able to capitalize on like digital shopping in this way and how America would be copying this
Ever.
essentially immediately.
I have no clue what you're talking about, sure. But Disney rolls out its ad-supported Disney Plus tier for $7.99 a month after signing up 100 plus advertisers. The ad-free tier will now cost $10.99 per month, up from $7.99 per month. Some NFTs minted on FTX now show blank images instead of the original art, as the metadata points to an ftx.us domain used for bankruptcy restructuring websites. Oh, the irony. Your crazy monkey is now a blank image because it pointed to FTX, who's now gone into
Maybe that's an
bankruptcy.
upgrade. Maybe that's an upgrade from those ugly
Fair enough.
pictures.
They might conceivably years from now be worth more because you have evidence. You now have a unique uh,
URL.
a unique commodity of sorts tied to the great fallout of the crypto apocalypse.
Just a
So
reminder, this can happen to any NFT.
so
That's a
have
very
you
good point, by the way. That's an excellent point. At some, your NFT, that Jack Dorsey first tweet, might be deleted. You'll have a picture of it.
Scary.
okay? Here's a new one from Reuters. In an email to advertisers, Twitter says it will launch controls to prevent ads from showing up next to tweets containing keywords as soon as next week. So advertisers no longer have to worry about their ads being seen next to things like this, which journalists keep trying to write those articles that your ads being seen next to, taking screenshots of ads next to thing and using it. You have journalists acting as activists to try and sabotage Twitter. And you should think to yourself, why are they doing that? Why are journalists who are supposed to be reporting news investing resources to convince advertisers to stop advertising with Twitter? Ponder that thought. There's a reason why. And the reason will become abundantly clear in time, and not a long time. And if you're one of those wickedly smart folks, it's already obvious. But anyway, for most folks, it'll take some time to understand why they're doing this. But those are the headlines, and now we get to go into the tweets. Did anyone have a tweet since we met last time? Okay. Well, people are sending in lots of tweets in no particular order. The first one I have here is from BB. It's from CNET. It says Amazon wants to kill the barcode. They say it's exclusive. Amazon built a computer vision algorithm from scratch to identify products without barcodes to help the robots ship products. So now the robot we built, you know what the barcode is for? It's because until relatively recently, computers or scanners didn't recognize that it was an apple or a cucumber or a can of Campbell's soup or cat litter or whatever that you were putting in your shopping cart. Well, guess what? Now the cameras can tell that. You no longer need the barcode. The computer vision software now knows what the products are. So
How many times have we heard that somebody's killing the barcode? Microsoft tried, someone else tried. It's just that it's convenient and it doesn't require a lot of processing power to figure out, oh, this is an apple. I had to go to a neural engine to figure that out. Barcodes are just convenient and they're easy and they're cheap. It's very hard to kill them.
And they can serve as a downtime supplement if anything goes wrong.
Yeah, they're just so cheap that it's like, why even bother?
Well, I thought the whole thing
well,
with the barcodes are impressive because IBM used to have this ad where there was a barcode on a baseball, and they would have a pitcher pitch the baseball by a barcode scanner, and it was able to pick it up. So it's a very robust and simple technology.
I'll give you an example. Imagine you're a restaurant in Southeast Asia and you buy a whole lot of tomatoes and potatoes and cucumbers and you bring them from the grocery store and you put them in your refrigerators and whatnot. And as you make dishes, you want to know when you're about to run out of those tomatoes, potatoes, and cucumbers. And due to rather off the shelf technologies now, you can do that all without barcodes. You could take scan the actual tomatoes and cucumbers and potatoes as you put them in your refrigerator, and then you have a camera that watches every dish get served, and it could estimate when you're about to run out of those ingredients.
Yeah, that's convenient. But if you're in a department store or like a grocery store, how are you going to tell the Roma tomatoes from the whatever other kind of tomato and the organic kind of tomatoes from the what other kind of tomato? It's
But that's the thing. The supermarkets are already having to do that right now, anyways, because all of the self checkout supermarkets are dependent on identifying the objects as they go in the cart without the barcodes.
actually they do have a little bit of a sticker on most of your produce now.
Yeah,
So
here
And
all
there
Right.
the
is an app.
tomatoes have
There
a.
is an app right now that does that also. So it would tie right in. I do see the validity of it.
In Kroger, we have those stickers on each a different kind of vegetables that you
Yeah.
scan, and it reads it, pretty easily. That's how you check out yourself.
The reality is that something like a vegetable or fruit might be possible, but we use it in distribution, and there's just no way to identify a box. We actually have a vision product that dimensions boxes, and we try to read the product, and there's just no way. We try to read the labeling, especially stuff coming from China has different labels from one week to the next for the same product.
Yeah.
So for something at a store like a Kroger, like you guys mentioned, probably possible. I can tell a green pepper. Probably better than a person does. You ever see somebody at a self checkout trying to look up the product based on a picture?
Hmm.
So true.
So difficult, but barcode kind of identify a different, variety of peppers. Just
Yep.
makes it easier.
Yeah, like I
Well, yeah,
mean,
to make
organic versus a non-organic. There you go. How do you identify that?
well, to make these kind of identifications, you can't use the visible spectrum. You have to go into hyperspectral imaging, and then it becomes much easier, much more straightforward. No, I'm serious. That's actually
and way more
the automated
expensive.
farms are using that actually. So, in fact, we're
Bill,
consulting a few of them.
Like
So
again, going to
it's
the
just over the
point that he
horizon.
made though, again, organic versus a non-organic, same thing, green pepper.
Yep.
Of course,
Or heirloom
everything I buy
tomato.
is non-organic, of course, you know what I mean, even though I picked it from
Me
the
too.
organic.
Hmm.
I think this will help to just like Tyler said, the self check counters. Many of them felt it failed because some shoplifters, for example, they can change the bag, and then you get a cheaper barcode. If they don't have this camera verification, or they have to, put a clerk there to eye every customer's with this self check. So I believe in the beginning this is hard to be a unified equipment, but I think it can be done both ways and as a help to each other. But just like Sam said, sorry, or Phil said, it's the box. If it's a container, then barcode may be faster than this photo or object verification. But also, you can have the photo on the box as well. So, I
You
mean,
know,
it's
if you think about, because we look at engineered time studies, it's important to take off a couple minutes in each transaction. So if you look at how much time it takes, that if I put a box and a vision grabs the box, and we do dimensioning with vision AI, so we dimension the box. If we try to identify the box, it takes so much longer to have a correction happen than just to scan a barcode. Every time I have to correct it, I've wasted so much time. It's money.
Right. And people are able now there is a barcode font that you can use like a person. You don't even have to be like a department store or anything, just to be able to smooth things out and get things going for the computers. And remember, all those barcodes readers, they're non-optical. They use that little laser thing that scans the barcode. It is partially optical, but it's not based on vision. It's just getting that very simple few lines and figuring out a number in a database and getting it's just so cheap and quick that it is hard to kill. That's why other methods of replacing barcodes have failed. Like I think Microsoft had one and it failed, and still barcodes are still here. I don't think they're going to go anywhere.
This technology has been around for quite a few years. I remember a friend of mine who was taking pictures of the food she was eating on a diet app, and this was going about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been out there. I think it's improving, but I don't think it's ever, like you said, going to replace a barcode. I think it's going to have some very niche uses.
Is QR threatening barcode in international shipping to any
I
No,
degree?
don't think so.
no,
I
no.
don't
They're,
think
they're,
so.
they're kind of the same technology. It's just a little bit more expanded kind of barcode. And what are we going to do with all the people who have barcode tattoos? We're gonna it's gonna be trouble for them.
I, QR code is having an impact in the supply chain. Definitely with batch managed items like food is very important because I want to keep an identification. I need more information to be able to put into that barcode. So QR is a barcode. It can handle a lot more. As a matter of fact, we print up QR codes that have a whole bill of lading on them, it's a QR code. So you don't have to go look it up in a database. You can scan that QR code and you see the whole shipment bill of lading right there. So that's the benefit of the QR code. So it is being used extensively. It's not replacing the barcode for item level, but it is definitely being used in other applications a lot.
I agree that QR has its own place because it can hold so much more information. Like, for example, the entire restaurant menu can be, scanned by your phone via QR code, where barcode cannot do that.
There's a full game in one QR code. One full you can actually scan it and play that game inside it. So there's a lot of information that you can pack inside of a QR code. A barcode is just a number.
I think it's more of a link to a website. The resources are still external with QR code.
No. It has a lot of information. It's actually a game that you can play just by scanning it. Look it up.
And
Only
4
seven
kilobytes?
characters, so it's not that much. It's more of a pointer than anything.
Chris, you're showing your age, buddy, thinking you can't
And
get a game in 4 kilobytes.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying is like QR codes have a maximum density of amount of information you can put them in. If you ever want to link someone a QR code, just some simple little tricks, you can actually type into DuckDuckGo QR code and then give a web link, and it'll actually give you a convenient one right there, which is very handy. But one thing that's interesting is that the length of the web address dictates how much data is inside the QR code. You'll see some of them are extra dense and have like all sorts of tiny dots, while others are very simple and have a very small number of dots that reflects the amount of information that's inside. The reason why this is relevant is that a smaller pattern is easier for a camera to read at a farther distance, while one that has much detail is something you have to hold exactly right. And if the lighting conditions are slightly off, it has trouble reading it. So groups that create a lot of QR codes that want to be used as many contexts as possible will try to shorten the amount of information that you put inside of it so that the vision cameras don't have to struggle as much to read the things. I've been absolutely stunned to see the amount of platform support that, at this point, this technology has been around for like, what, 20 years, 30 maybe? Uh, but now essentially it's an OS level function on everything from iPads to Androids to HoloLenses and Magic Leaps. It's quite astounding how just common the technology is. In Asian countries, they use them a lot more extensively than in Western ones. And it's really interesting to see how culturally different people use the technology to expand what they're doing.
Chris, it's about 8K, I believe, for a single QR code before animation. And then, of course, you can animate the QR code. And then you've got temporal resolution as well as spatial to think about. So it depends on the frame rate of your camera and so forth. I don't know what the maximum data rate you can transfer with the animated QR code is, but yeah, it's quite easy to calculate. But yeah, just FYI.
Yeah, those animated QR codes are really cool for like authentication and security. So like you point your camera with your phone on the screen and they have this little animation and it's used as a secondary authentication or third onto authentication layer. It's quite interesting.
It authenticates your lighting conditions.
You are
Okay, go
edible.
ahead. Okay, ready? Ready for the next one. Next one is from Katerina. Uh, NMN, which all of the longevity folks know exactly what that is, can no longer be sold as a dietary supplement in the U.S. In a surprising turn, the FDA has banned the sale of NMN in the U.S., causing concern among proponents of its anti-aging supplement. And so fans of David Sinclair and his lab at Harvard, David's probably been the biggest advocate for NMN and NAD.
Oxy
Um,
is a chocolate
Tyler,
mix.
what's NMN?
Well,
Sorry.
I think
and
one of the companies that is about to release this as a prescription, so they're going to be prescribing NMN, and I think that's what the move is. So if anyone has more to the story, I think.
Tyler, are you talking about the chocolate
Yeah,
one?
exactly. They are going. It's going to be a drug, and you cannot have a drug as a supplement anymore. It has different regulations. It needs to be prescribed and so on. So that's basic. So they're basically a lot of pharmaceutical companies are proving like the efficacy of NMN for different disorders. So then you cannot sell it as a supplement anymore. You need to buy it as a prescription drug and even
Stock
yes.
up on it before this. I know I stocked up on it a little bit. I use it for my pets and for myself, and it's quite an interesting example. I remember when David Sinclair talked about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. He said, you know, him and his father, they've been doing it for 10 years, but his brother didn't get it. They left his brother as a control, and his brother was so pissed when he found out because they look younger. So it's kind of funny.
I,
Something, but
what is NMN again? Sorry.
But
nicotinamide mononucleotide.
Great.
so it
Or
increases NAD levels, which basically what it does is the performance of your power plants in your cells, which are the mitochondria, they perform better and make cleaner energy. Like as you age, to make energy, it will create more and more pollutants, like just as if you would switch from a nuclear to like a coal power plant. Basically, during age, you switch to like bad energy production and that makes it go cleaner again. You don't
yeah.
use anything different like as a resource, but just you produce free radicals and all this stuff. If it's very inefficient, there's a higher leak of these damaging side products.
Yeah, it's like aging now can be fought with this chemical, and it's rather interesting because if you look at David Sinclair, he doesn't look as old as his paperwork says he is. So, if there's anything that I'll acknowledge, it's that David Sinclair literally has like kilos of this stuff. and uses it on himself. So way to go, and be the scientist who's like, actually, I trust my science this much. It's not always the case in history. Some scientists, that's a fatal a fatal choice. In this
Yeah,
case,
and
it makes him look younger.
the cool thing is he's not involved in any of these companies that produce this. He says he wants to stay clear and independent researcher without like these conflicts of interest to like being stuck on one compound. And if he then, if his research shows something else in the future, he doesn't want to be compromised by that. So he has no, which is very different from many other researcher, so he's not
And
involved in any way, and
where do you get this chemical naturally? Like,
on
where does
Amazon everywhere.
no. Where, not where do you buy it? Where, like, does it occur naturally? Is it like in apples or something?
In
And they
dark,
do these.
usually like in dark fruits, you can look it up. So like
Is it expensive?
no, it's not
It will be
expensive.
now.
Well, yeah. Well, you can order it probably from another country still.
Well, yours. So I'll give you one company. So the company that I've used in the past, this is the one that I use for my dogs. Alive by Science. So it's a sublingual powder, and it's about 100 grams, and I forget if it was 100 or 200 bucks for the bag, but that's kind of roughly how much it is. And you do one to two scoops, and there's like a little scooper there. I don't know how much it lasts for, but it's about a month or two for the bags. So for my dogs, it made all the difference in terms of just their ability to move around, and I was quite impressed. And so yeah, but
What's
make sure if
say
you
the
are
name of it again?
the
NMN.
company. The
Mm.
company is Alive by Science, like I'm dead or alive. Well,
No,
it's alive.
what is the chemical? That's the part I missed.
NMN, like Nancy Mary Nancy. NMN.
Oh, it's Niagen or not Niagen precursor, something like that.
Yeah, you can look up what David Sinclair takes. Like he takes not just NMN, he also takes metmorphine and resveratrol. And
Resveratrol.
he says this in the YouTube like podcast, and he says what he's taking. He has like a list in his
Well,
book. He says
I
like
take metformin, I take resveratrol, I take True Niagen, and I'm wondering if True Niagen is the same as this.
a True Niagen has a version where NMN is in there. It's like resveratrol, NMN, and something else is already mixed in there. I don't
Oh,
know.
so
You
it's
have
like a
to check
cocktail.
if that's the version.
That sounds like a great cocktail.
Welcome to Tech News Drug Edition.
Yeah, and yeah, David's youthful look can be due to potentially many different things. It's hard to attribute to one thing because it's
Yeah,
more of
yeah,
a.
but because he did the study, but because he kind of basically screwed over his brother. I think it's interesting when you look at photos of him and his brother that there's about a 10-year difference, I think, in terms of doing the drug or consuming the compound, as it were.
Yeah, and
And
he does a lot to all your But points, that's but also look assuming at his that dad. His dad is like a weightlifter. The guy's in his 80s and he's bench pressing. I forget how much weight. Like the stuff that he, and again, it's a regime. It's these drugs, but it's also the physical regime and all the working out and everything else that he does. And also the this sounds like, and I've heard him interviewed before where he's had certain things, supplements that he propounds or studies he's doing, and then pharma comes in, like they're sounds like they're doing now, and then they put it under the drug regs and patent it so that he can no longer he can it takes it out of availability. So when they see this, the pharmacies, the dollars behind it, and they've done that with other drugs too. It happens a lot out in the U.S. Like certain states, you can get certain drugs, in other states you can't. In this wellness area or this longevity area, so
well,
it'll
I
be
think
interesting.
the good news is that because it was so effective, somebody thought, "Hey, we're going to patent this. We're going to secure it. The FDA is going to come in, and now it could actually become mass prescribed. Because if it is such a effective treatment for aging or slowing down aging, aging has so many cofactors when it comes to other diseases. So if we can just slow down some of that, I think mass prescriptions of this,
But why not make it
would
available
not be
now?
unreasonable."
out without the prescription. Like I have a health and wellness doctor, and he tells me stuff to take that's not, So I have True Niagen as well, and I've had other things, and it's
It's about the
without a
money.
prescription. So putting it under pharma, I think, just bumps up the cost to people, and it's going to get hit them somewhere
Well,
in
it
the.
makes it insurable. It makes it insurable, and then it makes it, I think, affordable. I think that's the best path forward for these kinds of compounds because you want safety and regulation. And when you don't have it regulated at this level, the contaminants and other things are just not up to par, right? Look at the supplements market, right? The amount of contaminants in some of those products is concerning. It's not the case when when similar compounds are made as a prescription.
As just a random anecdote, this is kind of interesting. So I use Alibaba a lot when I'm doing costing for manufacturing equipment. I'm looking at things for like electronics fabrication, etc. I use it all the time for just getting quotes. They have data tables. By the way, if Western companies provided data tables, it would be absolutely make my life so much easier. When just at the beginning until you have to hunt for them. Alibaba, it's like the front page. Anyways, one of the things that's interesting is I looked at a while ago. I was looking at when everyone was freaking about nukes. I was looking at, well, iodine tablets are a thing. That's a thing. I looked at what the pharma manufacturing processes were for fabricating. Is like, could I actually get the equipment for doing so? Interestingly enough, I've never seen this error message anywhere else. Alibaba will refuse to show any messages related to pharmacological manufacturing equipment if you're in the U.S. market. I don't know what led to that, but I've never seen that error message for anything else. If you look at the equipment required to create a clean room to create pharmacy manufacturing equipment, apparently there's actually quite a healthy market for illicit pharma manufacturing, and acquiring equipment for that is actually apparently a bit of a thing. Even though it's not very complex or it's not very expensive, the supply chain for that is actually something that's monitored, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, Chris. If you buy some of those equipment, use a VPN. But when it gets shipped over here, they tell you like, "Oh yeah, just tell them that it's a refrigerator or this or that." I'm like, I can't say that. I'm not going to say that to the to the people. So you end up having a weird situation where you're like, "Am I even allowed to import this? What's going to happen?"
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I see already elderly trading in the men on the streets because Eric, you spoke like a true Canadian, right? It will like decrease costs, which is not necessarily true in the US, and not everyone has insurance. So,
Yeah, yeah.
as a
Sorry, that's my
European and
Canadian
Canadian,
communism here. That's my Canadian
Spoken like a
socialist
true
republic.
Canadian.
Well, Canadians might have it then, and if Americans copy it. But I think it's a great example of a compound that was once on Joe Rogan. Everyone thought it was bullshit, helps with longevity. And then there was this mass movement. It's very interesting to see how these biohacking efforts emerge, and biohacking in general is a very exciting field. So I think this is a win, although it might increase costs in the short term. Long term, I think it's going to, we're going to trade the cost for access. So I think that's worth it, though. So more
well, I'm
people
not
on it.
sure if you can say that David Sinclair at the Harvard lab with NIH and whatever funding is really biohacking movement, like this got funded with like real governmental
Well, him
funds.
going on Joe Rogan and saying that he's taking a compound that's not regulated and not necessarily tested because he's the one who's either developed, synthesized, or the one testing the compound himself, that's what I would classify as entering the world of biohacking.
Yeah, but that's what used to be the case for all kinds of doctors and inventors, like of
Yep.
medicine. Like usually people tried it out on themselves first,
So,
and
so,
then,
for,
it was the
Dr.
tradition.
so
Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, perfect example.
during the testing and kit stuff during early part of COVID, one of the things that was interesting is a lot of groups were experimenting with ventilators, testing kits, etc. One of the more interesting things is when I was learning about that is the FDA has an explicit mandate where they are there to assist with the practice of medicine. But one of the things that's interesting is that they draw a very fine line between consumer sales to the larger public and doctors that are coming up with tools or methods or treatments for their own patients. The reason why this is really important is that when a doctor says, I believe this treatment is going to be useful for my patients, they actually have ultimate authority over that. Now, when you try to sell to the larger public, that crosses into another separate thing where they can't assure the efficacy of the treatment for everyone in the public because that's outside the scope of what they can do for their direct patients. But the reason why that's interesting about doctors in the practice of medicine is that within small groups that they can especially monitor, they actually have the ability to do that. There's this weird gray zone of when they start to say, okay, now I'm going to become more of a businessman or an entrepreneur thing, and then it starts to get into like more regulated territory. One
Yeah,
last
yeah,
thing.
it's the difference between a case study or like exception of use of a specific compound, or if you do then a large scale study in order to prove efficacy in this and then get it approved for, let's say, diabetes or something. Those are two different things. Like if one patient needs something and nothing else can help, you can basically decide, okay, I'm doing this, and the patient agrees. But if you want to do a study, you have to get ethics approval and all this stuff, and then all these regulations come in.
Well, one more thing, just as a look from history with things, there's a really interesting set of events that happened for that led to the founding of the AMA. It used to be essentially army surgeons in the United States, but there was a movement to regulate the practice and standardize the practice of medicine and legalize the whether or not you're allowed to call yourself a doctor or not. The Rockefeller Foundation actually put a lot of money into that and a lot of resources into it. I haven't studied it as much. For people that look at the want to look at the history of where our current system came from, it's really interesting to look at what was happening around the 1930s or so and 1920s. Incidentally enough, that also led to the founding of the John Hopkins schools that spread the practice for science in China. And there's a whole other chapter of history that is fascinating in that direction. But yeah, a lot of our pharma companies have roots in some of those origins for when we start to say who can practice medicine and who can't, and the groups that have financial ties to the products being sold actually have an extreme incentive to have it practiced in a certain way. It's not necessarily good or bad, it's just very, very different. Our system has very long roots, and when you understand the origin where they come from, it can kind of help you understand the dynamics of how current things might play out.
Okay, here we go. Katarina found one about a new solar-powered EV car. It looks more like a golf cart. It looks exactly like a golf cart, made for the road in a way.
Australia has as an annual solar challenge for its solar powered vehicles. They have to be 100% powered by the sun. They go from one side of the country to the other. One of the things that works well for Australia is they have extra sunlight, which makes it handy. But there's a lot of design specifications you can do when you're optimizing for extremely low amounts of power, like making the vehicle rather than very, very tall like an SUV, you make it low to the ground like a sports car. That actually cuts down the amount of front area that you present to the wind, which can increase the amount of energy you have to expend exponentially. It's actually pretty remarkable. Standing up on a skateboard versus laying down on it reduces the amount of wind resistance by an order of magnitude. There's similar techniques you can do for with a vehicle where instead of having something like a giant semi truck standing up to the wind, you have a sports car type of thing where it's really low to the ground and the wind just flows over it. And what's interesting is if you do that design right, you end up getting these really long, flat vehicles. You can extend the back of the vehicle going way farther back than you do in a typical one, and that allows you to harvest more sunlight without presenting more oncoming wind resistance. There's all sorts of cool optimizations you can make when you're designing for a solar powered vehicle, and it's neat to see companies experimenting in the space.
So a company called Squad says they'll have an EV for $6,250,
Wow.
and
That's
then
remarkably cheap.
and
Can they
it's
go up
more like a
hills?
golf. It really looks like a golf cart. There's no doors. It looks plastic. It looks like it's a golf cart. Anyway, Google must delete inaccurate search info if asked in the EU. The European Court of Justice ruled that Google's and other search engines must dereference information, meaning remove stuff from their index, if the person making the request can demonstrate that the material is if the material is inaccurate. By the way, I happen to know, I'll find the article, that starting December 25th in Thailand, uh, one second, negative.
Guy who wanted to be forgotten in Europe. He's like, I want to be forgotten. It's like, okay, well, we'll make that the case. There'll be a huge. Everyone will know that you wanted this to be removed, and only people in Europe who don't use a VPN won't be able to find this. So I don't know how useful it is.
It's more a general
So,
principle. European Union just puts a bunch of rules in so they can say that they actually pretend to have still have some autonomy over their digital space.
Agreed.
so the Thailand law starting on December 25th will force platforms that host reviews to allow the the subject of the review to remove the review. So Google Maps, by law, will have to allow the businesses in the Google Maps to have curation ability of their reviews, as will Booking.com and Airbnb and everybody else.
There's an
Kind of an
interesting
interesting.
argument to be made where we've tried the other systems. Let's try another one.
Okay, Starbucks begins testing its Odyssey Web3 rewards initiative. The company is attempting to use modern technology to appeal to the next generation of coffee consumers because they heard about this hot new trend called Web3 and DeFi and tokens, and they want in on all of that hot mess just in time. Starbucks Odyssey. Get your latte on the blockchain. So, the Saudomini found this one from the BBC that fired Twitter cleaning staff is treated like garbage. That's the headline. The cleaners, who were sacked on Monday, have been protesting outside the headquarters in San Francisco because Twitter laid off half of the employees, cut down on the lunches, cut down on pretty much everything. And you don't need as many cleaning staff when you have half the employees. When half of the floors of the building are empty, you can imagine you might not need the full cleaning staff. And the BBC headline is Fired Twitter Cleaning Staff Treated Like Garbage. Because it's a pun. But it's not a pun. Because the journalists, as I told you 20 minutes ago, are trying to sabotage Twitter by highlighting the oh so adorable low paid office cleaners who are now, God bless them, protesting in front of the offices where they used to work. And the question, and by the way, the New York Times also has protests going on at their office.
Why would they bother sabotaging Twitter when it's the place where they all hang out? I mean,
It's a great
what are they
question.
trying to do? They're dumb.
Because they're
It's
not.
a great
They're just trying to make money, and Elon is inviting them to make money there. You know, if he stopped being in the news so much, I think they'd go elsewhere. They just go wherever there is a car crash. That's where they go, and you see it on both sides. You see Matt and the other guy like t- taking one side because they got something exclusive and they can make money that way, and the other guys are going to go make money this way. But I think it's as simple as that. There is no grand strategy.
One of the people told BBC a member of Elon Musk's team had said their jobs would be replaced by robots.
Yes, and everybody else for that matter, if you wait long enough.
Thank you.
Yes. And lawyers this week as well. And even computer programmers are starting to think they're going to be replaced by robots.
Absolutely.
Okay.
GPT-3 already is producing pretty good code. You know, it still needs to be verified, but it's all coming. And I think that's really the problem that society should be thinking about,
No, it's
is
not
that
general.
how do
Okay,
you,
okay. No. The code thing, I wanted to believe that it worked well, But even something simple like, hey, generate a Python script that combines two
No,
CSV
no, I
files,
understand. I'm just saying that it's coming.
and it
It's
makes
coming.
little
The flood of automation is rising,
yeah. But
and
if
it's
you don't
going to
do it
replace some of what each one of
right,
us does. And in due course, it's going to commoditize what really most of us will do. And it behooves societies to really think about that very hard right now,
see,
because
I think
that's
it's
going to happen.
I'm sure you and I probably learned C++, right? But kids nowadays learn Python. They don't learn about type checking and all these things. And I fear that something like ChatGPT allows you to generate code where you think it's doing what you want it to do. It doesn't actually do that. But to know that, you actually have to know the structure of the languages. So I fear that in the short term, it's going to be a shit show. Long term, no doubt. But how far
Oh,
is
I
that?
understand. But if you look at what Microsoft is doing with GitHub, and now that you have massive amounts of code already that you can go through, and so I'm just considering where we are right now is like version 0.1. Imagine what version 6.0 is going to look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
This thing
Okay.
is coming. AI is coming, and it will
It's
replace a lot of
definitely
jobs.
coming. It's definitely coming, but right now the analog to code in the English language is, blog posts or essays. And I've been trying it to see if it can replace my writing. And I've given it all kinds of prompts. And it's really good at producing substanceless writing that looks good, but it doesn't really produce good, factual
No, that's right.
information.
That's right. It gets boring real fast, and
It
and
goes
and it
on the one hand, and on the other hand, so it's got the frameworks down, but the content still would have to be provided by, let's just say a me.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you can have
of
an
course.
intelligent person at the helm of these systems, and then it is like a 300% increase in productivity because as I want to reach and search through SourceForge or GitHub or Stack Exchange, this can help me with little syntax things, but sometimes the syntax help is wrong. So I've been trying this for the last few days and super useful, but I would say like 7 out of 10 times it gives me something that I wasn't expecting and that I know was wrong, but I only know because at some point somebody told me that that was wrong and showed me that. So there's still this like mountain of evidence that I would call experience that has yet to be embedded. But I think that's why this beta is so cool because it's unlimited tokens right now. So they are in effect training it on all the things that people like myself and others on the stage want to use it for. So
Exactly.
if they're
Exactly.
listening, it'll become much better. And I would pay for this. I would subscribe to this on a monthly basis if it could get better incrementally every time I use it. So if I went to
Now
sleep
you
and I woke
see,
up,
yeah,
that
and
would
if your productivity goes up by 300%, and that's great, but now, so eventually it's going to like replace you, and that's really the problem. And I think that if
well
we wait long enough, 10
so
years,
I'm not,
20 years,
if it
yeah.
replaces me, then I have other work to do. So I'm not so concerned. But I agree with the average worker, it's probably concerning.
Yes, but if you look at across society, and if you say that AI is a flood that is rising gently but surely, and eventually it's going to be able to replace more and more and more of what each one of us does, and sometimes completely, sometimes partially, that's a societal problem that I don't think is, at least not that I can see, is being discussed and planned appropriately. This is how revolutions happen. Now, add to that climate migration, add to that a couple of other disturbances, and now suddenly it becomes really bad news. So I think we have to plan for it. We have to make sure that AI is at the service of humanity, not in competition with it.
Well, what's one thing that you would do to make sure of that? Because I don't know what you would do other than saying, hey, guaranteed minimum income for those of you who have no capita output. But eventually you would want to participate. Even something like participating on this stage could one day in the future be itself a job, even though now it's a collective, a hive mind, so to speak, of people coming together and sharing their knowledge and expertise. So.
Well, I think you're pointing in the right direction. That's the kind of thought process that needs to be happening. so that we can have a proper vision of the future and then we can plan for it. But that planning needs to be coordinated. It cannot just be left to one company or one even country.
Okay, moving right along. The researcher from Saudi researchers harvest electricity from wood soaking in water. Water and wood may one day be all that's needed to provide electrical power for a household.
That's an interesting one. It do- first,
Is that like a bunch of
what
potato
form of
batteries?
Water
yeah?
shortage comes to mind.
Well, I'm not so worried about that. Depends where, I guess, in the world. Certainly where we are, we got loads of water. But what on earth are they talking about? What form of energy production even is this fundamentally? Modifying the nanoscale
I just
composition
You
of
see it?
wood?
I just tweeted.
Cold
Yeah, no, I
fusion.
see it. Yeah. Hmm.
Follow. Feel free to jump in if you have a
Okay,
thought.
well, here you go. I have a
The
thought. It's 1.53 microwatts per square centimeter, so ain't going to be powering very much. Don't try and run your car off it. I'll go do a quick so if you're going to run your house off wood, I'll go off for a second and do a quick calculation. Let's imagine you have a big bag of wood, like a kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, but like a half-ton bag of wood delivered every, I don't know, month. Let's work out what you could power with that. I'll be back in a minute and let you know. I suspect it's bugger all, a light, not even a light bulb, but I'll go work it out and come back.
And how much would you get from burning that and turning into steam and running a turbine and getting all sorts of energy out of that?
Well, I can answer that. You'll get
let's
about 5 kilowatt hours per kilogram doing what you've just said. But
Great.
this electrical output, I'll tell you what it is in kilowatt hours per kilogram in a minute. Not much is the answer, but
Okay. So the next is also from Saudi. How AI found the words to kill cancer using machine learning. Researchers at UC San Francisco, in collaboration with a team at IBM, have developed a virtual molecular library of thousands of command centers or sentences for cells based on combinations of words that guided engineer immune cells to seek out and tirelessly kill cancer cells. Just retweeting that one. Thank you, Saudamini. And the next one is from ABC News. Women sue Musk's Twitter, alleging discrimination layoffs. Two women who lost their jobs at Twitter when Elon Musk took over are suing the company in federal court, claiming that last month's abrupt mass layoffs disproportionately affected female employees. Two women lost their jobs. The discrimination lawsuit is the latest in a series of legal challenges. Days after Musk bought the platform, the company told half of its employees that they no longer had a job but would get 3 months severance. The cutbacks continued. The lawsuit alleges that also disproportionately women were harmed who are, quote, who are more often caregivers for children and other family members and thus not able to comply with such demands. Oh, okay, because one of the demands is you're going to have to work more hours, extreme hardcore work. So the cutbacks said all remaining employees choose to resign with severance or sign a pledge of extremely hardcore work, long hours, and dedication to Twitter's new direction. Scores more lost their jobs after declining to make the pledge. The lawsuit alleges that that pledging process of pledging to work extreme hardcore work, long hours, and dedication disproportionately harmed women who are more often caregivers for children and other family members and thus not able to comply with such
Oh, I
demands.
can't wait until this travels through the courts. I cannot wait to see this. But I'm going to side with Twitter on this one.
It,
Isn't
it gets better.
California have some laws against it?
the
Against
hold
what?
on. The risk of derailing 2 seconds, Tyler. 1 millionth of the energy you'd get out of burning the wood. So we'll talk about a dud headline. Calculations in the chat. 1 millionth.
The Twitter started the year with 7,500 employees. And the lawsuit filed on Wednesday on behalf of the female workers makes the claim that 57% of female employees were laid off, compared to 47% of male employees. The plaintiffs are scheduled to speak about the lawsuit on Thursday.
That is so hard to go
Now,
through because it depends on the role, the position. You know what I mean? Those top line figures are just,
well,
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, those stats don't
I
indicate
think it's safe
discrimination.
to
exactly.
correct, as the very it's very simple to prove in the sense that it's almost certain that the 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 hardcore developer sysadmins and such, those roles were likely more preserved, where the marketing, communications, roles that are traditionally held by women, even disproportionately held by women in the HR department historically. So if they're not hot, the recruiting, the HR, the marketing, the sales, again, all of these are roles where you might even have parity, if not more women than men. Those roles are more vulnerable to layoffs. So yes, you would expect to see far more women laid off than men in a company after a private equity acquisition where they're going scaling back down to the engineer level that keeps the site running.
It,
So I don't know how they're going to be able to prove that that's
wouldn't
discrimination
you
of
be
some
able to
sort.
make just slice the data any way you want? Like, wouldn't all the top execs that left, they had higher income? Could you could make a, I would say, unwarranted argument that the people with more money got laid off, or whatever. I don't know what the warrants of the data are, ageism or whatever argument you want to make. You can slice the
Now,
data to have a 10% disparity, right?
well, you could also argue that Twitter unnecessarily added if the sales and marketing teams are disproportionately female, that Twitter was potentially trying to make the entire company, because they have an annual report on their diversity, and in their annual diversity report, maybe they were adding women into roles that weren't as necessary, and so now when they're being, you know, maybe they had an incentive to add uh, when they should have been adding women to the engineering teams that could withstand downscaling.
Fascinating. Vast. It's just like
Anyway,
when
yeah.
people talk about income inequality, it uh, it drives me nuts. In that I would say, well, let's look at job to job, not across jobs. Look at engineer to engineer. Look at doctor to doctor. You know what I mean? Versus school teacher to doctor, school teacher to engineer, or various things like that. And that's regardless of whether you're talking about ages and race or gender. So it'll be very. I look forward to seeing this case move through the courts.
I'm also interested to see how this plays out because when you are interviewing for a job, for example, for a physician interview, I was asked what were my plans for family, how much time do I have before I have, some family responsibilities because during residency, you are not going to
Yeah.
be given any extra days off, any extra breaks. So you need to plan ahead and declare that you are committed 100%, or else we have other candidates who would be able to commit to this job more than
That's not legal to
Which
ask
country?
in Canada, for example. You can't ask.
I know. I know it's
That's illegal
illegal,
in
but it
America.
was
But it happens in cluster.
it,
I can verify that
it's
in cluster
illegal.
interviews. It definitely happens.
It was illegal, but it
Yeah, but
happened to me, and we were eight candidates sitting
where?
together for a residency interview. There were four guys, two of us were females, and that was the question asked to me. And second question, in New
Where?
York.
I
Huh?
Yeah,
And
have a
why didn't you
hospital
see
that
it?
asked a person if
You
she
had
was a redhead.
they were writing you $1 million check in front
I
of
yeah,
did not
witnesses, and
know.
you
Okay,
didn't take
back
it.
then, my mind is I want to get into residency, right? I'm not thinking about legal battles because residency cycle is so tough. You're so rushed into doing things that you're single-mindedly focusing on how to get to this spot that you have gotten competitively. Even getting into an interview is like competing against hundreds and thousands of people to get that interview position, right? So over there, you have to be just competitive with all the other competitors. And one sign of weakness that they sniff, they cut you off. That's how the interview process is.
Well,
That's
we
how it
would have
works.
taken you at Howard University Medical and Meharry Medical if you would have considered HBCU. We're more than welcoming.
No, I'm just discussing.
And I would have, as a lawyer, I would have taken that case all day long if you had actual witnesses who
Very seldom do they
were
complain
witness to
because
the
the
case.
medical community is extremely small. And if you're intending to burn one person, then you burn
Yeah.
your entire bridge because
Exactly.
word will get around. I
Word
yeah.
gets
worked at
around. No one will hire you.
Partners, which is a very large organization,
No one will
and I
hire
sat
you.
on those
Blacklisted
clusters and I saw
forever.
them do this.
Not blacklisted like technically, but they will be like, oh, don't hire this person. That's what she does. It's very,
Yeah, it
very.
would have closed your medical career. It would have like closed the door on the medical career, but then you could have been an activist. You could have had all this money to change
That's
the thing.
also true.
So
Yeah,
it
but
could have
I took another
been
path, right? I took another path. I'm doing what I love to do. But yes, I'm telling you that that's what happened, and this is what happens to females. Also, you're not given any days off for your period, for example. Period cramps are the pain of a MI given to you every day. So when you are going through that, nobody gives you any slack for going through your periods while you are on duty. So I did, get a position, not there, somewhere else, but that I'm still going to see how this case, dishes out because nobody gives you a slack for being a female, having periods, having kids, or any other responsibility. So if they are claiming that you have other responsibilities and somehow you should be given a slack, okay, I'm not sure who's gonna give you that. No one, as of now, does.
So I got to run through
I
these.
also wanted to mention that Aram, if she were to have this magical lawsuit, it would take years, and she would need those people who are also worried about their careers as doctors to be
No
witnesses.
one's
And
talking.
Exactly.
I don't think it's likely. I'll speak as a risk management finance person. I don't think it's likely in that environment to ask someone to put the brakes on all of their academics, all of their medical training, all of their teaching to be empathetically able to step away as someone dies at the table and to compartmentalize like that and to not realize that she's going to just compartmentalize that statement and get a job somewhere else. And I just think that it's just easier in the hypothetical to suppose
yeah,
you would take a different action.